Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to another episode of News Dose, where I give you all of the latest gaming news. And there's a good chance that you may have heard a rumor over the last 24 hours that Halo Infinite was cancelled for the Xbox One. There's been a lot of speculation that 343 Industries should just focus on the Xbox Series and leave the Xbox One behind, and a recent finding really elevated that speculation. Well, 343 Industries themselves responded to this rumor, and we'll talk all about that here in just a moment. Also, CyberPunk 2077 has been facing a lot of scrutiny since its release. CD Projekt Red stock has been plummeting, but so far it doesn't seem like there has been a major effect on the game's success. Yeah, it's continuing to do really well at retail, so stick around for that. First though, we got a lot of other things to talk about, so let's get right into it. And first up, I want to talk about a new game release, Super Meat Boy Forever. So this game hasn't been getting all that much attention, which really surprises me. I think some of that has to do with the lack of exposure. They just kind of revealed this game years ago, and then not really much after that until about a week ago when they announced the release date at the Nintendo Indie Showcase. The original Super Meat Boy though is one of the best independent games of all time. I still believe to this day that Super Meat Boy is one of the best 2D platformers ever made thanks to its tight platforming and brutal but fair difficulty. Well, after 10 years, Super Meat Boy Forever is finally out today. Yeah, you may not have realized that because there's not really been that much talk about it, but you can pick it up on the Nintendo Switch or the Epic Games Store right now. With that said, this is a very different game than the original. This is an auto runner, and that may throw some people off. I haven't tried it out for myself yet, but it still looks like they kept it very challenging, but I do think it's important to know ahead of time that this is not exactly the same as the original game. In fact, Edmund McMillan was not involved with the development for this game. From my understanding, there was some tension behind the scenes, and he parted ways with teammates some time ago. Now, he did work on The End Is Nigh, which is a great follow-up to Super Meat Boy as well. It might even be a little bit more similar to Super Meat Boy than Forever, so if you want to go check that game out, definitely do that. But even then, I like what I've seen so far in Super Meat Boy Forever. Sure, it's different, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's not good. So if you want to try this game out, you can go pick it up right now for $20 on the Switch or the Epic Games Store. Now, we have a few weird topics to talk about today, and I was thrown for a loop when I first saw this. So did you ever think to yourself that KFC should make their very own console? No, I never thought about that either, and yes, I am talking about the fast food chicken restaurant. See, they actually partnered up with Cooler Master to make their very own console named the KF Console, and it's got a wild design. It almost looks like a bucket of chicken, and apparently it even has its own chamber inside to store and keep chicken warm with the natural airflow of the PC console. I don't know if I would do that myself, but like I said, this is a strange announcement. I mean, 2020 has been an odd year as we all know, and this really is just the icing on the cake. I will say this, however, it looks like it's going to pack some real power behind it. They're claiming it will run up to 240 frames per second, it has ray tracing, it's VR ready, and it has a 1TB NVMe solid-state drive. So it's definitely a capable machine. We don't know the price yet or how many will be available though. I think this will be pretty limited, and KFC themselves even said this is not meant to take off. It's just a fun little project that I'm sure will give them plenty of publicity. They might even try to make this a reward for customers who purchase their food. Restaurants always like to do these promotions in order to get more customers. Nonetheless, I'm sure we'll see what their plans are here soon, but definitely a reveal I wasn't expecting at all. We also got some movie game related news as Sony is reportedly going all out on PlayStation movie and show adaptations. We of course know all about the upcoming Uncharted movie where it focuses on the origin story of Nathan Drake. Spider-Man's Tom Holland will play as Nathan Drake, so there's some excitement around that movie. It's got the talent and it's a big franchise. I know game-related movies oftentimes turns out to be just absolutely terrible, but I'm hoping for the best with that movie. As I've said before, I am a big fan of Uncharted. This, however, will be the first movie made by Sony's new team, PlayStation Productions, so we'll see real quick what they're capable of and whether or not they understand how to properly adapt these game franchises into movies. That's not the only game-related franchise that Sony's working with though. It's now being reported that they're working on 3 game-related movies and 7 TV shows. Yeah, they're going all out with this, and I think it's smart. If they do a good job with these, it gives these games more mainstream exposure. If you look back at the old Tomb Raider, one of the reasons it grew so much in popularity and why Lara Croft is one of the most recognized mascots of all time was because of its movie adaptation and Angelina Jolie's acting. So if done right, there is that potential for widespread recognition among games as well. We'll see about all that, but I am curious as to what franchises they're going to work with. Ratchet & Clank, Sly Cooper, and Jak and Daxter all stands out to me immediately. I think any of those three could make for a good show. I know the Ratchet & Clank movie wasn't great, but again, if done right, that could be a different story. Also, you have games like God of War, Death Stranding, Horizon Zero Dawn, and so many more. So I really want to know what they're working on. Let me know what you think though. What PlayStation franchises would you like to see get a TV show or movie adaptation? And speaking of PlayStation, the former creators of the PlayStation IP Gravity Rush and Silent Hills revealed some new details about their upcoming game. About a month or so ago, Keshiro Toyama, Junya Okura, and Kazunobu Sato announced their departure from PlayStation Japan to create their own studio, Boca Game Studio. Now, they also have brought over several former PlayStation Japan developers, so they do have a lot of talent, and as I mentioned before, they've worked on games like Gravity Rush, Silent Hills, and even Puppeteer. So fans are really wondering, what are they going to work on? Well, Keshiro Toyama in an interview with IGN did give us some new details about their upcoming game, and this is what we now know. It will be an action-adventure horror game that appeals to his fans. They, however, will focus on making it a broader entertainment experience rather than a hardcore horror game. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what that means. When he says it's going to focus on a broader entertainment experience, I immediately think about Resident Evil. That's the most popular horror game franchise that I know of, so maybe it's going to be something similar to that. He does very specifically mention story elements, so I'm thinking that's going to be one of the main things that they focus on. When you have a really good cinematic story, that can appeal to a broader audience. As for when it will release and its availability, he did say a fairly large team is working on this game, and they're looking to release it on as many platforms as they can in 2023. So it's a little ways away as you would expect, but it sounds like it's going to be an ambitious game. We're definitely going to need to keep an eye out for this game considering the talent behind the studio. This could be the next big horror game for all we know. Let's talk about Xbox though, because a big rumor popped up yesterday about the Xbox One version of Halo Infinite getting cancelled. I was getting messages on Twitter about this, but what happened was that a LinkedIn profile surfaced online where a 343 Industries lead designer only listed an Xbox Series X and S version of Halo Infinite. After that, rumors started to spiral out of control, as the internet tends to do with this type of information. Because there was no mention of an Xbox One version, a lot of fans assumed this meant that the Xbox One version was cancelled. And really, there's been a lot of speculation about this for months and months, especially after Halo Infinite was delayed. That's what really sparked a lot of these conversations, as the original demo that they revealed did not meet expectations in terms of visual fidelity. So some thought maybe they would just primarily focus on the Xbox Series from that point forward. There was even an insider earlier this year claiming that the Xbox One was struggling to run Halo Infinite with adequate performance, and 343 was considering to only have it to be a next-generation game. The thing about that, though, was that it never proved to be accurate. But yeah, there's been a lot of speculation that it won't come to the Xbox One, so I'm not really overly surprised to see another rumor like this pop up. Well, luckily, a 343 community manager responded to this rumor yesterday and has revealed that they are still working on an Xbox One version of Halo Infinite, which may or may not make you happy. That's a thing about this though, because I've seen a lot of mixed reactions over this, and I think that's why these rumors keep popping up. There are some fans out there that have hopes that this will only be a next generation game, because there is that stigma that the Xbox One could hold back next generation. I'm not really too worried about that though. We've already seen several cross-generation titles, including Spider-Man Miles Morales, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, amongst several others. These games do look much better on the Xbox Series X and PS5 thanks to the dramatic increase in performance, resolution, texture, lighting, ray tracing, shadows, and so on and so forth. Now, there is that argument with CyberPunk 2077 though. That's a game that is not particularly performing great on last-generation consoles, and there's that worry that Halo Infinite will be a similar situation. Is it going to be another game that just doesn't do well on last-generation consoles? I think CyberPunk is a special case though. It really seems like CD Projekt Red tried to rush that game out to the market knowing it had problems that they would fix over time, and I think in the long run, they will get most of those issues fixed up. You also have to remember we haven't seen the Xbox Series X and PS5 version of CyberPunk yet. So we can't really say that it held back next generation until we actually see what it looks like on the Xbox Series X and PS5. What we can say though is that CyberPunk should not have released in the state it's in for the PS4 and Xbox One. Those are two separate issues though. We haven't really seen other cross-generation games release in that state, or that I know of at the very least. So I can't say that will be a common problem going forward until this starts happening in other games as well. We'll see what happens with Halo Infinite, but based off Halo 4 and 5, 343 can make a very good looking Halo game. I expect it to perform well enough on the Xbox One with some sacrifices and look excellent on the Xbox Series X. I know that first demo didn't look great, but hopefully with this long delay they can get that fixed up. Halo has a lot of passionate fans and it deserves a great game. I will say this though, I still think the gameplay in that demo looked great. It really gives off those Halo 3 vibes and that's exactly what I want personally. Either way, do expect an Xbox One version of Halo Infinite to release alongside the Xbox Series. On to our last topic though, CyberPunk 2077 is back in the news again, and this time it's not bad news. Despite all of the controversy that surrounds CyberPunk, and it's a lot, it continues to succeed. When it first launched, we had learned that it had sold through 8 million pre-orders, which was insane all on its own. But since then, it has sold another 5 million units. That brings up the total to 13 million units sold worldwide. What's notable here is that this also includes refunds, which has been a very hot topic. It seems like there's a lot of people requesting refunds to the point PlayStation flat out took it off of their storefront. I mean, you cannot buy it digitally on PlayStation right now, and that's because I'm sure Sony was tired of getting phone calls requesting a refund. And even then, CyberPunk has sold 13 million, which goes to show you their marketing was brilliant. This is definitely one of the most hyped up games that I've ever seen, and that's really my concern with this. Yes, it's sold 13 million so far, which is great, but we need to keep in mind what CD Projekt Red was originally projecting CyberPunk to sell. Before release, they were expecting to sell 30 million lifetime, but since its release, they have brought that number down to 25 million. That's a big decrease. So while 13 million is impressive and all, I think it's the long term where it's going to be affected a little more. CD Projekt Red's reputation has taken a big hit, and we haven't seen how that will affect the company going forward. Now, if they announce The Witcher 4 or something like that, I think a lot of this controversy will kind of disappear, but I could definitely see consumers maybe being a little bit more hesitant with purchasing their games at launch. Bethesda has been one of those companies that's known for releasing great but buggy games, and CD Projekt Red might be heading down that path. As I've been saying, CyberPunk is a good game, and I'm curious about how consumers react to it once they release a next-generation version. Are we going to see a ton of hype for that release as well? I could definitely see some fans holding off on their purchase until then. Anyways though, that's it for this video, but if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.